Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 6. The demigods and demons declare a truce. Text number 28, but we're actually reading from text number 24, I believe. Is that right? 21. Okay, text number 21. So 21 to 28. But we'll recite 28 and then I'll come back to the rest. Drishtvarin apyasam yatan Jatak Shobhan Svanayakaran Nyashedhad Doitcharat Slokya Sandhi Vigraha Kalavit Drishtva, observing, Arin, the enemies, Api, although, Asamyartan, without any endeavour to fight, Jatakshobhan, who became agitated, Svanayakan, his own captains and commanders, Nyashedhat, prevented, Daicharat, the emperor of the Daityas, Maharaj Bali, Shlokyaha, very respectable and prominent, Sandhi, for making negotiations, Vigraha, as well as for fighting, Kala, the time, Vit, completely aware of. I am going to go back to text 21 and we'll read through the texts, and there's a couple of small purports. Text 21. Immediately, and this is Lord Vishnu speaking to the demigods. And Lord Vishnu is giving the demigods some good advice. Immediately endeavour to produce nectar, which a person who is about to die may drink to become immortal. O demigods, cast into the ocean of milk all kinds of vegetables, grass, creepers, and drugs. Then, with my help, making Mandara mountain the churning rod, and Vasuki the rope for churning, churn the ocean of milk with undiverted attention. Thus, the demons will be engaged in labour, but you, the demigods, will gain the actual result, the nectar produced from the ocean. Purport. It appears that when different kinds of drugs, creepers, grass, and vegetables are put into this milk, and the milk is churned, as milk is churned for butter, the active principles of the vegetables and drugs mix with the milk, and the result is nectar. Text 24, my dear demigods, with patience and peace everything can be done. But if one is agitated by anger, the goal is not achieved. Therefore, whatever the demons ask, agree to their proposal. A poison known as Kalakuta will be generated from the ocean of milk, but you should not fear it. And when various products are churned from the ocean, you should not be greedy for them or anxious to obtain them, nor should you be angry. Purport. It appears that by the churning process, many things would be generated from the ocean of milk, including poison, valuable gems, nectar, and many beautiful women. The demigods were advised, however, not to be greedy for the gems or beautiful women, but to wait patiently for the nectar. The real purpose was to get the nectar. Sukadeva Goswami continued, O King Parikshit, after advising the demigods in this way, the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead, the best of all living entities, disappeared from their presence. Then Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, after offering their respectful obeisances to the Lord, returned to their abodes. All the demigods then approached Maharaj Bali. Maharaj Bali, a most celebrated king of the demons, knew very well when to make peace and when to fight. Thus, although his commanders and captains were agitated and were about to kill the demigods, Maharaj Bali, seeing that the demigods were coming to him without a militant attitude, forbade his commanders to kill them. Purport. Vedic etiquette enjoins Grihe Shatram Api Praptam, 'Apī 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 praptam, when enemies come to their opponent's place, they should be received in such a way that they will forget that there is animosity between the two parties. Bali Maharaj was well conversant with the arts of peacemaking and fighting. Thus he received the demigods very well, although his commanders and captains were agitated. This kind of treatment was prevalent even during the fight between the Pandavas and the Kurus. During the day, the Pandavas and Kurus would fight with the utmost strength. And when the day was over, they would go to each other's camps as friends and be received as such. During such friendly meetings, one enemy would offer anything the other enemy wanted. That was the system. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sva Padantikam Mokam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. So, some interesting points here. And good advice for all devotees. Naturally, the demigods are keen to get the nectar. And this is also generally the motivation of most devotees, right? Prabhupada says here in this second purport that we read, the real purpose was to get the nectar. Right? Anandam buddhi vardhanam pratipanam punas ritam vardhanam. This is our business, get the nectar. And the nectar that's being provided by this churning of the milk ocean is the nectar of immortality. So that's highly desirable. Although, mind you, the demigods' motivation is generally materialistic. They're sakama devotees, not akama devotees, they're sakama devotees. And so we have to be mindful of the motivation for getting the nectar. The devotees' motivation for, or the motivation's purpose, the devotee's purpose for getting the nectar is not so much to get the nectar, because their purpose is to render service. This is the general. This is the proper mode or the proper mentality of a devotee. Is that certainly we know that the nectar may come, but that's not the real motive. The real motive is to please Krishna. Whereas the demigods' motives sometimes are mixed. And also, we have to be careful because sometimes, even in our attempts to be successful, sometimes our motives will be mixed. And so these instructions that are given by Lord Vishnu to the demigods are pertinent for us. Because as we churn the ocean of bhakti, if you like, we'll also experience some of the things that are described here by Lord Vishnu. When we mix our motivations and our intentions and our desires in the churning of the ocean of bhakti, then all sorts of things will come out, as you probably have noticed. Right? And as is mentioned here, one of the first things that comes out is poison. You know, I was preaching at our urban yoga centre a few months ago, and I was talking to a young girl who was chanting Hare Krishna, and she said, I stopped chanting. And I was encouraging her, if you chant Hare Krishna, then you'll be ecstatic and you'll be happy, which is usually the result that we're looking for. But she said, when I chant Hare Krishna, all of these disturbing things come up in my mind. Right? We've all experienced this. Right? We're chanting Hare Krishna, and sometimes the chanting feels like, it feels like it's poison. You know, we chant and everything is just black. Have you had that experience? You're fortunate if you haven't, but watch out in case it appears. Because Rupa Goswami tells us that our tongue is afflicted with the jaundice of ignorance. Right? And so whilst the chanting of Hare Krishna is very sweet, naturally sweet, because we're sometimes afflicted with this disease of avidya or ignorance, what would normally taste sweet tastes very, very bitter. But the chanting of Hare Krishna, you know, the process of devotional service is the medicine, it's the remedy. And just like when I was a kid, I had mumps. Do you know what I mean by mumps? The glands in your throat swell up, and anything you eat is bitter. But it's super painful. I think I had it when I was 9 or 10 as a child, and my mum used to give me medicine. I think it was just a disprin to kill the pain in honey, right? So, and the honey was to make it sweeter. But mumps is such a disease that anything, and especially first thing in the morning, you take it. Oh, it's painful like anything. But taking the honey, and of course with the analgesic, with the painkiller inside, within 20 minutes the pain's gone. Right? So chanting Hare Krishna is very much like that, and as is warned by Lord Vishnu, churning the milk ocean, poison will come out. But Lord Shiva is the auspicious antidote in this particular case. He drinks up the poison. So similarly also, in the process of bhakti, that chanting of Hare Krishna does bring up challenges and obstacles or poison, where we feel uninspired to make progress in our devotional service, but we need to recognize that these are symptoms of progress. It looks like an obstacle. It looks like an obstacle, and very often it is. It is symptomatic of our material contamination, but it is also an indication that the process is working. It's not to be shied away from or disregarded. Right? Similarly, also, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur warns us about anarthas that will arise as a consequence of the practice of devotional service. So the demigods here are being warned, okay, there'll be poison, but also there will be attractive items that will manifest as a result of the churning of the ocean. Huh? And what were they? Gems. Okay, so what's that? Money. And beautiful women. And we know Lord Chaitanya prays, Najanam, Nadanam, Najanam, Nasundari. Right? What also happens, or what can happen, in the process of bhakti is, and it's a fact, you know, when I became a devotee, I had nothing. Actually, I still don't have much, but people will praise you as a devotee. They'll give you money. People will bow down and praise and glorify you, tell you what a wonderful fellow you are. And so these are also dangerous. You know, they're attractive. It's attractive to have people say, Jai Prabhuji, or Jai Maharaj, or Jai Guru Maharaj. It's attractive to have people tell you what a wonderful fellow you are. But that's also dangerous. That also can be it's a poison that is very, very subtle, and it tastes good, but actually it can kill you. It can kill your devotional practice. So the demigods are being warned by Lord Vishnu to watch out for these challenges. And of course we should also, we can take note. And he mentions that one shouldn't be lusty, which is calm, one of the 6 enemies of the mind, and one shouldn't become angry. Right? In other words, one should be very patient when one proceeds in trying to get the nectar. Right? Because the real nectar doesn't actually come from these material acquisitions. But even though we may be aspiring for spiritual perfection or spiritual advancement, still we can be bewildered by calm and crowed, right? We can become bewildered by the material facilities and the material prosperity that even comes for a devotee. Prabhupada mentions earlier on in one of the purports how Krishna looks after his devotees. He provides us with success in ways that we couldn't have imagined before we became devotees, especially for those of us who joined the Krishna consciousness movement 40 or 50 years ago, and when it was a great struggle to establish ISKCON, where the devotees were being thrown in prison, put in jail for distributing books and for chanting Hare Krishna. Certainly in Melbourne, where I come from, Prabhupada encouraged the devotees. He said, keep going out on Sankirtan, keep doing book distribution. In fact, there's a funny exchange where our lawyer is talking, and it's on a video. You see there's numerous videos of Prabhupada in the Melbourne temple and sitting on that blue chaise lounge with a mirror behind him. And you can see the reflections of the devotees. And Prabhupada was laughing with the lawyer how the devotees had got caught stealing flowers for the Rath Yatra parade. This is a funny story, this one. And Prabhupada was saying how actually the people from whom the flowers were stolen were benefited by the devotees stealing their flowers, right? And so they're having a bit of a chuckle. And Sikhi Pucha Dara, who's in America, he's the one who took the rap, and our lawyer was representing the devotees. So Prabhupada was saying how it's not actually a bad thing that this man got his flowers stolen. It was his benefit. I'll tell you a story. Later on, a year or two later, the devotees decided that they needed to build a glass house for Tulsi, right? So they thought, we need to seek some advice from somebody who could help us, you know, a horticulturalist, a gardener, who could help us build the glass house and look after Tulsi properly. So they thought, let's go down to the market gardens in Dandenong and ask some of the farmers. So they went and knocked on the door of one of the farmers, and have a guess what? It was the farmer that they'd stolen the flowers from. So he was getting the benefit of having his flowers stolen and also getting more association with the devotees. Anyway, where was I? We've achieved success in consideration of those days when we struggled. The devotees struggled to just feed themselves and clothe themselves. And yet now we're in a situation where in Melbourne in the last couple of years the government gave us $500,000 because of our feeding prasadam to the poor and the hungry. Right? And so rather than throwing us in jail, they're now praising us and giving us money. But with that comes danger. One becomes prominent. People tell you what a good fellow you are. And so consequently, that can give rise to pride. It can give rise to a false sense of accomplishment. It gives rise to forgetting that ultimately Krishna is the one who's providing everything, and that Krishna is the one who's the giver. And if we misuse it, then Krishna can also be the one who takes it away. So poison may come up, material allurements may come up, but one has to remain steady. Lord Vishnu is recommending here, calm. When there's desires, one has to learn to tolerate them. When there's anger or impatience, we were discussing the other day, especially for devotees, sometimes we may not be making spiritual progress at the speed that we think we deserve or the speed we desire. And so we become frustrated. We may even become frustrated with Krishna, angry with Krishna. What's going on here? Why aren't I making spiritual progress? And this can happen even when we're materially successful. We're not making the same amount of spiritual progress. And so we're getting disturbed by the material facility. We can become discouraged our enthusiasm becomes weakened because we're not making the spiritual progress that we feel we should. So Lord Vishnu is warning the demigods, don't become disturbed by desire. And don't be disturbed, here in this particular case, don't become angry at the demon's demands. You know, in one sense we have, well, I'm speaking for myself, we have demoniac qualities. Well, certainly I do. And so the demon sometimes stands up and wants to be heard. So we also have to tolerate and not become angry at our own lack of spiritual progress. Very important. One has to be very steady and determined in one's spiritual practice in order to make progress. And Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad-Gita that one has to be steady, step by step. One has to, in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. I've forgotten the verse. Anyway, we need to be steady in our practice and not be surprised at the poison that might come up in the form of lack of attachment or being distracted. Haridas Thakur mentions in the Harinam Chintamani that inattentiveness is the root of all offence. And inattentiveness can come from just laziness. You know, we're just lazy. And not having an attraction or being distracted by material desires. And so when we are chanting Hare Krishna, these are often the first obstacles that we have to overcome in rising up to that point of the clearing stage, so that one can then reach the stage of steadiness. And sometimes we've been chanting for 20 or 30 or 40 years and still the devotee, even though Prabhupada says the process of bhakti is automatic, if we're not applying it properly, then it won't happen automatically. We'll find that it's like stop and start. And so the chanting of Hare Krishna especially hinges on removing this inattentiveness. This is the root, right? Attracted to material things, or just having that poison of no attraction for chanting Hare Krishna. And of course, the cure is to just keep steadily practicing and not be discouraged by the distractions that are in the mind, basically, the 6 enemies of the mind. One has to be very detached. And you know, they're kind of like residents in the house of the heart, if you like. And so here Lord Vishnu is suggesting you have to make a truce with your enemies. Right? That doesn't mean you capitulate, but and of course the demigods are going to have to fraternize with the demons, but they're being advised you have to be patient. Don't get angry if they make unreasonable demands, right? And sometimes, you know, the internal demon will make unreasonable demands of us. We can't get disturbed, can't be surprised by these demands of the mind. And at the same time, we can't get angry. We have to remain steadily fixed on our practice on our bhajan. We have to remain fixed in our bhajan. the Vaishnavas greet each other, and one of the greetings, traditional Gaudiya Vaishnava greetings is how is your bhajan? When we meet each other, we say, oh, how's it going? We're generally referring to external things. But the Vaishnavas, when they greet each other, and Guru Govinda Maharaj told me this, or he spoke to me in Oriya, because I didn't have a clue what he was saying. And I said, what's the translation? He says, how's your bhajan? Right? And so our bhajan has to be steady, despite success, we have to be careful with material success or failure, and the fact that we'll be plagued by what appears to be incessant desires. But Krishna tells us the devotee is one who, even though the desires still flow, like the rivers flow into the ocean, still the ocean remains undisturbed. There's a quality, not that a devotee is desireless. There was one time when Srila Prabhupada was left in a room by his servant, by an attractive woman. And then the servant came back later, and Prabhupada said, why did you leave me? Why did you leave me like this? And Prabhupada explained, even though a pure devotee may be free from material desire, it doesn't mean that he doesn't know what's going on. And so Prabhupada, in his humility, was warning his disciple, or his servant, that still, for the devotee, there may be, due to the interaction with the material energy and how the material energy is so strong, then that interaction gives rise to desires coming up within the heart. That's normal, not unusual. But our measure as devotees is the degree not to which we get disturbed, but the degree to which we stick at the process and try to not get disturbed and not get angry and not be surprised by what happens, basically, but try to keep that very, very steady demeanour. This is a symptom of a pure devotee, as mentioned in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. They're not disturbed by anybody. They don't disturb anyone. A pure devotee doesn't disturb anyone and isn't disturbed by others. Is not niramama. Doesn't think of these things as belonging to himself, but rather sees them as the ebb and flow of material existence. And is not disturbed by success or failure. So very interesting qualities. 34, 36 qualities of a pure devotee are quite astounding if we make a study of them. Because it shows a degree of detachment. We actually have to cultivate detachment even when we're in a situation where we have material opulence. We have to maintain detachment. So, steadiness in the practice of bhajan with alertness, and Lord Vishnu is saying to the demigods, you need to be alert because these things will arise. And so we as devotees also have to be, Prabhupada does say, chanting and feasting and always ecstatic, to encourage us. But at the same time, in his books and in his instructions, we're also given warnings. Prabhupada says, when one takes to the process of surrender, to the process of devotional service, then one is in effect declaring war on Maya. And so, if we're declaring war on Maya, what does that mean? She's going to fight back. And we have to be prepared for that. And so it's simple things. It's chanting Hare Krishna, studying Srila Prabhupada's books, keeping in the association of the devotees. Always eat prasadam. Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad-Gita, one of the qualities of a devotee is that they always eat prasadam. There's many people in Melbourne. We have 3 restaurants. There's many people who eat prasadam every day. So gradually they're, and even Prabhupada mentions it, we're eating our way back home, back to Godhead. So it's not complicated things. In fact, it's very simple things. I remember for many years I was, as a young devotee, looking for the secret formula, the magic key that would open the door to pure love of Godhead. And after searching for many years, I discovered that actually it's everything that we do. It's all the things that we do, steadily, consistently, day in, day out, that has this, that opens the door to the Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, the ocean of nectar. So, now there's an interesting mention here. Text 30, no, text 28. This etiquette here. Grihe shatrum api praptam visvastam akuto bayam. How to deal with one's enemies. Right? Here's how you should deal with your enemies. When they come to your place, you have to treat them as if they're your friends. Isn't this is quite interesting? Well, not that they are your friends, but one has to deal with them respectfully and with a smile, a seating place, right? And an exchange of pleasantries as if they were your friends. So this is again that position of a devotee which is equipoised, not disturbed. Not easy to do. It requires practice. Practice to treat your enemies with respect and a demeanour of accommodation and detachment. Prabhupada gives the example. And so the Bali Maharaj, when he saw the demigods coming, who he's been fighting with for God knows how long, the tension between the demigods and the demons has been going on. But when Bali Maharaj saw the demigods coming in a peaceful, what is it mentioned here? Without animosity, right? Then he greeted them with friendship and told his captains, keep cool, right? Keep cool. Bali Maharaj was well conversant with the arts of peacemaking and fighting. So then he received the demigods very well. And then Prabhupada gives the example of how the Pandavas and the Kurus would fight in the daytime, and then at night they'd be friendly. So an interesting point here. Okay, I'll finish here. Does anybody have any comments or questions on any Bhajunarayan Maharaj? Yep. He wasn't very impressed, actually. He said, "Don't you?" He said, "Don't you know who I am?" It was obviously different devotees to the ones that had, they would. The carnation beds were, in rows, in glass houses, and the devotees it was like a commando raid at night to get the flowers, and then and then, somehow they worked out, and they were actually at the Rath Yatra parade with the police, and the farmer said, "They're my carnations." So they had to halt the parade, and the devotees had to take all the carnations off, and then they went on with the parade.
Just perfume it with this illusion.
Yes. Yep. And? Yeah. Well, there's a taste that we experience from the performance of bhakti, and that's the motivation for the devotees striving against the odds, so to speak, right? And that taste you cannot get anywhere else. You can pay you can't. You cannot purchase this at all. I've had the experience in my interfaith work. I had an Anglican priest, the equivalent of the Episcopalians in America, came to the temple with others, and he told me, he said, "Aniruddha," he said, "this is the first vegetarian meal I've had in my life." Right? But then he was putting his shoes on after having gone into the temple, and he said to me, he said, there's a feeling here that I get nowhere else. Right? I've experienced this same feeling when I've entered temples like, he mentioned Angkor Wat. He said you get this feeling of sanctity, right? And he said, you can't get that anywhere else, right? So, yes, there's problems or there's issues, there are challenges, as there is for anything. If you want to achieve even something materially successful, you have to put the effort, and you may not be successful. Right? You may not be successful, or you will only achieve that material success after a lot of effort and a lot of endeavour. And as Dave and Vrindavan Maharaj mentioned the other day, that's okay, that's fine. But if the devotees have to put 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or even possibly lifetimes of effort into perfecting bhakti, then people say, "Oh, this is no good." But it's that special taste of bhakti, the practice of bhakti that keeps us, because, and the thing is that Krishna is not he's not a meanie. He reciprocates also with us. And so and he mentions that in the Bhagavad-Gita, ye yata mam prapadyate, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So as we surrender faithfully to Krishna's, to the service of Krishna, then Krishna does reciprocate. It's just that we're greedy, we want more. And so then he tests us, just to make sure that we're not going to misuse it. We're in the material world because we've misused the opportunities, the facilities that we're given. So we want more of bhakti, but Krishna is testing us to ensure that we become pure devotees. So even though, from the external point of view, it may look like it's unfair, actually those tests, they are considered the greatest wealth of a devotee. Sachinandan Maharaj quoted that verse, quoted that saying of Prabhupada yesterday in class, and that's in his newsletter that he puts out. And Prabhupada's reminiscing about how he's in the West, he's got so many servants, he can eat as much prasadam as he likes, he's got all facility provided for him, but he still remembers his beat up old room in Vrindavan. He remembers the Vaishnav torn quilt. He remembers that facility in Vrindavan where Prabhupada was being tested to the extreme. Yet Prabhupada had that fond affection for those simple days in Vrindavan where he was struggling like anything. But he remembers them with such great fondness. So even though the devotees are tested, they still relish the tests from Krishna because they were the impetus, or they were the challenges that have brought them to the point of pure devotional service. So they don't ever resent those challenges. They value them as if they're the greatest gift.
Okay, I'm back in the boat. Thank you very much.
Yes, Prabhu. Where's that microphone? Here, behind you.
Such good points you were bringing up about how Vishnu says to deal with the demons. That Jutta Karma does the programs on the History Channel, and they actually mention that the other religions, people fight because their scriptures tell them to kill each other. They said the better program than that is in the Bhagavad-Gita, where Vishnu tells the demigods better to try to get along for your own self-interest, and then according to the verses you said also, they said the other religions could take example from this.
Yes, don't fight with your enemies, make friends with them.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll be fighting all the time, right? Kali Yuga is just, there's so many enemies, but if you can get their energy, harness that energy, and this is what's happening here, they're harnessing the energy of the demons to get the job done. So yes, good point. We can take advantage of, or shall we say, we have a more conciliatory approach to conflict than others might have. Although mind you, our philosophy, we're not against a fight, right? We're not against a fight. We're also realistic, like Bali Maharaj. He wasn't against the fight, but he knew, okay, now's time to make friends. And we should be like that too. And Lord Chaitanya revealed his Sudarshan Chakra to chop off the heads of Jagai and Madai. And Lord Nityananda said, whoa, hang on. You'll be, if you're going to kill these fellows, you have to kill everyone. So, we're more on the peace. The Battle of Kurukshetra was a previous yuga. We're now in Kali Yuga. And we actually influence people by our character. You know, a lot of our preaching is not actual preaching. You know, Prabhupada said, he was asked, how do you recognize the devotees? And Prabhupada said, because they're gentlemen and gentlewomen. And so, and even sometimes not preaching is preaching. Right? Just being a devotee, being friendly, give prasadam, sit people down, just treat them nicely. And the aura of a devotee has an effect on people. We don't know it because we're always with devotees, so we're used to each other. But when we associate with people who aren't used to associating with the devotees, and they get that association, they're like, whoa, this person is different. And that by itself just has an effect. So even not preaching is preaching sometimes. And it's better than, you know, Sarvadhamam Parijajya Mamekam Saranam Braja. You can win most arguments with a cauliflower pakora. Huh? You just remembered. Yeah. Yes. 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 Very good point. Achar and prachar. First of all, act, then preach. And sometimes the achar is the most effective. You know, a man is judged by his actions. You can say so many things, but if our presentation of Krishna consciousness comes across as being arrogant, people don't buy it. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.